Transitioning Humanitarians live session. Hi, Vicky.
Hello, Asel. Hello, everyone. Great to be here again.
Yes, great to be here and talking to you. Me talking to you from Lviv. And the reason why I want to mention it is because there might be a risk of electricity cut or alarm. So that's why, in case I disappear, it would be because of me. But otherwise, I'm happy to be here. And the topic that Vicky and I wanted to talk about today is a topic of not being yourself in where you are. And this is the topic that came up from our conversation with Thomas the other day. And I thought it's such a good topic to go a bit into depth so that we understand why we're doing it. And consequences of that, and essentially what can we do differently
Yeah,
if we don't like the result that we're getting, right? So that's why, Vicky, maybe we start with the topic of, or the
yeah,
question of what it is and why we do it. What would you say?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to define what it is to be oneself. When I started thinking about it, I really thought that it could mean different things for different people. So clarification is really very important. And what came to me was really that if I can't be myself, it means that some very important part of me is lacking self-expression, that there is something within me that is really at the core of me. And if I can't practice this, if this either essence or skill or something cannot come out, cannot be fully expressed, or at least partially expressed, that really it's I have some internal struggle. And you know, one of the very interesting a very interesting examples that I was reminded of is something that is very relevant for aid sector, and at least in our line of work that we used to work in protection, is that for many of us, we joined this line of work because we wanted some sort of action, because justice and fairness is a core value of ours, and we wanted to change something in the world for those where human rights are not respected, to bring more protection to these people, and by very often by means of even advocacy or speaking about it and doing these things. And ironically, this some very often, by joining this organization, you're being taken away this core value of yours, to really fight for it, not because it's not on the agenda, but because the means and methods and tools used are different from the ones that we went for the job. So I'm saying it because it was very much part of my journey as well, where I felt that we need to speak out for these people. There is need for very core, my need of self-expression. I need to do something for those people, but I wasn't able to, or wasn't allowed to, for gazillions of reasons. Back to you, Asel. I don't know what is your vision or your understanding of not being yourself.
Yeah, so the way that I was thinking is that essentially we are showing up in the workplace differently than we would normally do
Hmm, hmm,
in our whatever the comfortable setting that we're in, right? And I was thinking why we do that, and I came up with two at least major reasons. So one would be because we think it's beneficial or it's serving us in some way, like we want to show up as professionals, or we want to be part of the team, we want to, I don't know, be understanding, right? We want to understand the rules of the game that we're in. So I think there is like one part of that for sure. And the other reason why we do that is because of fear, meaning that we don't think
yeah,
whatever the way that we show up is not appropriate for the setting that we're
yeah,
in, or we are made to understand that's the case, right? Some people commenting on how we show up that could
hmm,
also influence us. Or people, there are teams who are so established already that you coming in
hmm,
lets you understand that the way that you want to run or the way you want to
yeah,
do things may not be in accordance with how they are so accustomed to
yeah,
doing it. So that's why you feel like not belonging, you feel like you need to adjust, adapt. So that's why you start changing the way that you show up differently. So, and that's, I think, like, is very hard thing to do for the reasons that you said, is simply because we humans want to be treated well. We humans, like, naturally, we want to be part of the group where we are at, right? So these are the very natural things, and if we feel like that's not happening, the conditions are not there, then we start either shutting down or hiding, or we start rebelling against, or
Yeah.
we start like trying to always understand and being confused and not really feeling like we are being the person that we're wanting to be. And
Yeah.
this brings me to the consequences of how that affects like our mindset a lot, right? So
Hmm.
I mean, it can also have positive effects in a sense that we are able to learn a lot, we are able to
Hmm.
understand how to behave, how to advocate for ourselves, how to set boundaries. These could be the some of the ways that we learn through the experience, but also it can have the negative effect of we not wanting to be the who we are really, and trying to always change, or trying to always show some version of it that we think is appropriate in that environment, whatever that is, right? So, and the problem with those adaptations or changes that we are seeing, unfortunately, what happens is that then we are not really liking ourselves in those environments. We're not really wanting to continue that role anymore after a while, and we get into this mode of being like in the corner, really feeling like we're in the corner and we need to get out, and we start then maybe thinking of transitioning or many other reasons. Oh no, I am speaking, but Vicky seems like you are not online. I don't know if it's my internet or it's Vicky's internet, but anyway, so I'm hoping that Vicky will join us. I'm sorry, this seems to be happening a lot this week, the technical issues, and we apologize for it. But we hope that you will still get the content of what we're saying, the messages of what we're saying. Anyway, even though Vicky, I hope that we'll come back very soon. So the speaking of the consequences, especially if we are showing up in the way that's not really true to who we are, and especially if we're showing up in the way that is not really natural to how we show up in life, and we're trying to adjust, or we're trying to find a way to adapt, or if we're trying to um, rebel, or whatever the reactions that we're having, um, I think the other big consequences of that is that we then are not really concentrated on the cause of what we're wanting to achieve, on the cause of how we want to help other people, but we're so busy in our own head of trying to find the solution to the situation that we're having, right? So this is, I think, the other consequences of um, not showing up the way that we ideally would love to show up. Okay, 1 minute. I need to see if Vicky is trying to join. I don't see her, unfortunately, and I don't know why that's happening. I'm hoping that it's not because of my internet, so I apologize if that's the case. Let's see. I don't see a Vicky yet, so I guess I will continue while she joins. So as I so it seems like my um, apologies. It seems like my internet is not good enough, so it blocks out Vicky currently. I'm sorry. Um, Let me see how I can get her in. Um, mhm. Okay, it seems like it's my internet that got Vicky. Ah, she can see me, but I'm not seeing her. Interesting. Hold on. I mhm. Okay. Okay, we're trying to sort out with Vicky what's happening. Very sorry for this. Let's see. Ah, now.
Okay.
Yay!
We had a
Sorry
little
about
bit of
that. I
adventure.
exactly. So we were
Sorry
speaking
about it.
about consequences, Vicky, and
Okay.
I spoke my part of what I think the consequences are.
Hmm.
Like basically, I think the major two things come up if we are trying to adjust and adapt because we are fearful that whatever the way that we're showing up is not good enough for that environment. Then oftentimes I see that we tend to then get into the blaming energy of blaming
Hmm.
ourselves, blaming the other people, or we tend to get into this trying to fix things in one way or another, and then we will be so much in our own heads that then we don't really work on the cause that we came for,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's when we start then not liking our work, we're not liking
Hmm.
our environment, and we're then maybe oftentimes trying to transition or get to somewhere else
Yeah.
because we're not really able to be the person that we're wanting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anything else comes up in terms of
Yeah,
consequences of
I
life?
fully agree with what you're saying. It's really if we are not able to fully express who we are, what is the core, then we really are not living we are not being true to ourselves, the mind, the heart, and all of it. And that's why also all the issues of self doubt or and lack of self-esteem will show up because the 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 how we will perceive the situation will be, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, I need to be someone else to be loved, to be accepted. And of course this is never a very helpful way of perceiving ourselves in the world, and will not facilitate us to living our true potential and being really creative and needing to go where we want to go. So
Exactly.
absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe the other thing that came up to me to also say that the opposite of that could also be that we get so much into the convincing energy or the proving energy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We want to then prove why we're right, why
Yeah.
we're doing the right thing,
Mhm.
or why it should go the way that we want to go. So it gets so much into like heavy lifting the whole time, and it gets very
Mhm.
tiring
Yeah.
because we're not really getting what we want. We're not really showing up the way we want to. We're not really actually doing all the things that we wanted to do, and therefore, like it feels like a lot of the things that we are really there for is not happening. So then we question,
Mhm.
what's the point, right? Which is rightly so. What's the
Yeah.
point of being in that
Yeah.
environment if we can't express ourselves the way we want to or get the work done in the way that we think is right to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the question becomes is what to do in such situations
Mhm.
where we feel like we're not being true to who we really
Mhm.
are. What would you say,
Yeah.
Vicky?
Yeah, I believe there are a few things to be done. So first of all, it's really to test the assumption that we cannot be who we really are, and what because sometimes we may assume because we have seen somebody that was maybe penalized, that maybe didn't receive a good reception. Sometimes we just assume because of the people who they are around. We assume that okay, but I can't do it because these people are different from me, so I won't be accepted. But that's an assumption. So really, it would be good to give it a try. I mean, within sort of acceptable way, of course. I mean, it doesn't have to be full blown, but maybe have a conversation, or maybe just to give it a try. What would it take to have this full expression, and really sort of try test the assumption. Is the assumption correct? And of course, again, within the limits of the possibilities. But very often we have assumptions about a lot of things, and they're not true, or they're not fully true, or they are like a little bit left, a little bit right. So really testing the assumption is, I think, I would say, one of the first things I would do.
Mhm.
So again, several things. I would test the assumption. I would also try to think about how would it look like. How would it look like without, and maybe that could be actually even before testing the assumption, how would it look like in this work environment if I had the possibility of a full expression, if I could really be myself? And really just picture it, what would need to change, how, or what would need to, or what would I need to change?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? What would be your suggestions, Afel, to this
Yes.
question?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that the way that I'm going to say maybe was going to sound like very blunt and maybe not many people will accept it, which is fine, but I just want to offer it anyway,
Mm-hmm,
is that I would always suggest to show up the way you are, no matter what,
mm-hmm,
and deal with the consequences rather than showing up as someone else and dealing with the consequences.
mm-hmm,
And maybe that's going to be very hard for some people, and I totally
mm-hmm,
get it because I used to be also in the beginning of my career someone who always tries to adjust to everything, adapt to
mm-hmm.
everything, and do all the things. I used to think of myself as I'm so good at executing. This is how I used to think of myself.
Okay,
Like, you just tell
okay.
me what to do and I'm gonna do it, right? It's
See,
like how
okay.
I remember seeing
Mm-hmm,
myself. And over time, obviously, learning about the organization, learning about myself, things have changed. But what I have really learned over all the things that I've done on, like growing myself essentially, what I've learned is that there will always be people who don't like us,
of
and
course,
there will
yeah.
always be people who like us no matter what we do or no matter what we don't do. So that's why
Yeah.
what I really came to understand is that if we are behaving or showing up differently because of fear, I would say show up anyway the way you think who you are, no matter what the consequences will be, because there will always be consequences for whichever way we show up. And I rather want us to deal with the consequences of standing for ourselves rather than trying to figure out why we're not standing for ourselves. Because
Yeah.
in the end of the day, we are the one who are advocating for people out there who are suffering,
Yeah.
right? So equally, that's the time when we advocate for why
Yeah.
we don't need to be suffering
Yeah.
unnecessarily. So that's why I would say
Mm-hmm,
that this is my suggestion. Now, also the other thing that really helps me at times is I would like, of course, when fear comes, it has this effect of freezing a lot of the time, right? So we don't like,
mm-hmm,
as if we don't know what to do in that moment, as if like we don't know what to say or how to show up. And if that's happening, that's okay and normal, and because that's how fear does with us. So in those moments, I tell myself, if I wasn't afraid, how would I show up? Right? Like a bit like Vicky was saying, if I
mm-hmm.
wasn't afraid of anyone here or their opinion or whatever thing that I think is bad or negative, if I wasn't afraid, how would I show up? And then start doing the next step and the next step instead of
Mm-hmm.
always trying to figure out um, how to make
Fit
everyone
in. Yeah.
else okay with you, right? So how to,
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
don't want to use the word pleasing because it sounds maybe very
Mm-hmm.
harsh, but we often, I think, get into this space of, oh, in order for me to work peacefully, I cannot create conflicts or I cannot create
Yeah.
non-harmonious environments and all of this. But just because we show up the way we want to does not mean that we create non-harmonious
Yeah.
environments. And we should, I think,
Mm-hmm.
understand that is because if by us showing up the way we want to, there is a harmony disrupted, it's because that environment maybe is not inclusive. Maybe that environment actually needs
Yeah.
to look at some of the
Yeah.
things, because we all
Mhm.
need to be showing up the way we want to, no matter what the cost is. I
Yeah.
find so
Yeah.
this is really like the main thing. Anything Vicky wants to add?
Mm. Yeah, I agree with you that it's really important to be true to ourselves and to exercise the with it. And if it's limited for, you can live with it for a limited period of time. But if you extend it, it's not, you just not, nobody's going to be happy, because you're going to be have internal tension, not only mental, but also like on a spiritual level, on your soul level, and even physically. It will demonstrate even physically. So yes, you can do it for a short amount of time, but for long. And again, I agree with you that it's really important to fully express and try to be yourself. And again, try different tools, right? Ask yourself these different questions. One of the additional questions I would also ask is, what's the worst that can happen? Right,
Exactly.
in continuation a little bit of what you have been mentioning. What's the worst thing that can happen? Just name it. And very often, again, we have assumptions thinking that this and this will happen, but yeah, sometimes you will see people says nothing. That very often actually the opposite happens, because people say, oh, thank you for your courage, thank you for being open to talk about these subjects, or suggest something we haven't heard. Of course, I do believe that one of the very important words you said at the end is inclusion. And this is something we know, that not all environments, unfortunately, in aid sector are yet fully inclusive. And this is a work in development, and hopefully this will happen sooner than later. But yes, you also don't want to be working in an environment that is not fully inclusive. Because if it's not
Exactly.
inclusive for you, it's not going to be inclusive for the people we serve as well. So again, things are linked, and you're the best served when you listen to yourself and when you listen to your
Exactly.
own needs.
Exactly. And the other thing I was thinking is that, so if you are showing up differently because you think that's beneficial in whatever way, right? Like I was saying earlier, if you think it's beneficial, like check with yourself also if you're doing it to just be validated, to get validation, which
Mhm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
used to be an expert in it, and I find myself still doing that sometimes, like wanting to get
Mhm.
people's approvals or people's like telling me how great I am and all the things. So whenever this is happening, just notice why are you
Mhm.
wanting or craving for that validation, right? And what I found for myself to be true is that if I'm doing it, it means I'm wanting to believe about myself in a certain way, and I don't believe it about myself. So, for instance, if I give you an example, so if I show up as very extroverted, entertaining everyone, trying to get everyone to be on board for whatever thing I'm wanting, and wanting everyone to say yes to sell how great this is, and we all want to work on this together and all of this. If I'm in that space of doing that, means that I'm not really being myself. And and of course,
Mhm.
this is like my personality, right? So everyone needs to check with their own personality. Maybe some people are just extrovert by nature, but I tend not to be that way usually. And if I'm doing it, then there is usually a reason why I'm
Yeah.
doing it. And the reason is probably like
Yeah.
I'm wanting to be liked in whatever way. And then I ask myself, why am I wanting to be liked? And there is a usual answer is something like, because I'm not liking myself in that moment, or
Mhm.
because I'm
Mhm.
wanting to get some kind of recognition that I'm a great leader or I'm a great
Mhm.
person or whatever, right? And then I tell myself, well, I can actually give that validation to myself, or I can believe that about myself. So I don't need to do that next time.
Yeah.
So do you see what I'm saying? Is like I'm not in that moment telling myself, "Oh no, I shouldn't be doing this," or punishing myself, or like having battles with myself. I don't really do that because I think it takes time to start learning about yourself more. So when I
Mhm.
do that next time, I'm like, I it seems like I'm needing something within me.
Mhm.
I'm needing this recognition. I'm
Yeah.
needing this well done you. whatever the
Yeah.
statement, and
Yeah.
that I can give it to myself. I don't need to create all of that scene for me to get it from other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe the other thing that I had in mind is that the other thing that I also noticed most oftentimes also from myself is that if I'm showing up in a way that's not really who I am, but I'm wanting to be that person, right? So meaning that I admire, for instance, a person, and then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I would love to be that
Mm-hmm.
professional. I would love to have those qualities that the other person has. If you are in that space, that might also be a nice thing because you're wanting to grow, you're wanting to
Mm-hmm.
acquire some aspects that you don't maybe yet have. And in that moment, also ask yourself, how can you embody it specifically in that environment, right? Which is again in line with who you are, instead of like um, instead of trying too hard to be someone else all of a sudden and then having lots of crashes within your
Mm-hmm.
own mind of like, oh, people are seeing me this way and I don't want to be seen that way, but then I actually want this. And then there's like a lot of the confusion that comes in. Instead of that, just like if you want to be, for instance, if you admire someone who's very efficient or who is very like to the point, like this is how I used to admire people for. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask myself, how could I embody that in every little tasks that I do?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I show up that person in that
Yeah.
little task that I'm doing one time at a time instead of like making it very abstract and big
Mm-hmm.
and then how it aligns with me and then all of this like existential questions without that just embodying specifically I think would help. So I guess with all of this what we're really advocating for is not showing up the way you want to or not being the person you are in all areas of your life will have grave consequences, which I mean, you don't need us telling you that because you probably know this, you probably have experience
Yeah.
of it. And therefore, what we really want to advocate is that if that's the case happening, try to understand for yourself why you're doing it, and also, we gave you some of the ideas as to how not to do that anymore if that's not really what you're wanting. Any final thoughts, Vicky?
Thank you. That's you have summarized it very well. Maybe we can just mention the subject we'll be talking about next week, if that is okay.
Yeah, yeah, so
Yeah. So so do give us a call or send us a message if you want to really dig deeper in the subject in the subject that we've just discussed. I want to leave the sector because I can't really be myself. And for next time, we have another, I think, very, very relevant topic for our humanitarian colleagues is that our help. I can't leave the aid sector because I love adventure too much and I love traveling too much. So do tune in, and we'll be happy to have a chat with you on that.
exactly amazing. So then, thank you so much to you all for watching us, listening to us, and apologies for
Thank you.
the technical issues. But we're hoping that we will soon be in a more like stable
Yeah,
place, at least for myself. So until then,
yeah.
we apologize for it, but we hope that you have still gained a lot from watching us, hearing us anyway. And we talk to you next week. Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Thank you. All the best. Bye bye.